Well, good morning. At least it's morning here at Maxwell Air Force Base when we were recording this block of instruction for you. And this, generally speaking, is a block of instruction on the importance of OPR and EPR writing, but specifically it's going to focus on bullet writing. You know, they say you don't get promoted in the Air Force, but your paperwork does. And there's a lot of truth in that if you think about it. You personally don't meet a promotion board in person, nor do the people that you supervise. Only your paperwork and the paperwork you do for them will actually meet the board. The OPRs and EPRs tell the story, and you have to be good at telling that story. In this lesson, we will be looking at the magic of excellent bullet writing. I'm using the work of Chief Master Sergeant retired Eric Jarin from his Brown Bag Lunch and Learn lessons. It's the best advice I have ever seen on bullet writing. In fact, I wish I had had this when I was a captain. Now, some of you have been writing bullets for a long time now, and you might wish to fast forward through this or play it at a faster speed and get to the Chief's guidance, which is at the end of this presentation, and that's perfectly fine. Now, this also may be new news to some of you, and I encourage you to slow down and to study the middle and end of the lesson before we get to the Chief's excellent insights. It could make a difference for you and the people that you work with and who work for you between writing a good bullet and a great bullet. Additionally, you will have to demonstrate your mastery of this content later in the Deputy Wing Chaplain course with a bullet writing exercise. Now, let's go over a few of the basics for those who are less experienced. And we'll take a look at a few slides pretty quickly. In fact, I'll let you look over them because they're relatively self-explanatory. This talks about the process of Airman Comprehensive Assessment. And you can see these are some just general bullets about the importance of OPR, EPR writing. You can also see the importance of it being, of course, a permanent record of your past performance, and you see the due dates and who does the work. We'll say more about the providing input on specific accomplishments in just a moment. Now let me add to what you've just seen some more basics. The first point I want to make today is the importance of knowing your audience. Now, many of you are active religious ministry professionals. You communicate in a variety of different ways all the time, and you know the importance of knowing your audience. Some of you are not religious ministry professionals during the day, particularly if you're a reservist or a guardsman. And so let me reiterate for you the importance of knowing your audience. It's a basic rule of good communication, and I can't stress the importance enough. An officer promotion board is your audience for OPR and EPR communication. It's made up of line officer 06s and at least one career field 06. For the active duty, it's an active duty board. For the reserve, it's a reserve board. And for the guard, it's a guard board. And those boards are led by a general officer. Line officer 06s are looking for both the story of an airman's performance as well as how the story is told. They may only have 2 minutes, I'm not kidding, 2 minutes to look at your record or the records on the people that you will write. And they score those records. After all the records are scored, they are racked and stacked from the top to the bottom, and then the exceptions are discussed. If there's a wide variance in the way several raters rated a single individual, they'll discuss that variance, and then they'll negotiate and kind of work through further looking at the records to document and support their opinions until they come to an agreement. And then when everything has been racked and stacked, a cut line is drawn, 2 cut lines in fact. A cut line for the top third, a cut line for the middle third, and then that leaves a bottom third. And then the decisions are made about who gets promoted. The story you tell in the OPR or the EPR that you write will tell the difference and make the difference in those decisions. And it'll make the difference between the top and the middle and the bottom, and therefore career field progression. Write what they're looking for and the way that they are looking for it. Now we're going to take a look at exactly what they're looking for and how they want to see it. The first thing I want to emphasize for you in your OPR, EPR writing is the job description. That actually might sound counterintuitive, but listen, your bullets should always show how you did your duty, the job that was assigned to you. For each duty assigned to you, there should be at least one bullet. Now next, the norm for bullet writing format that perhaps many of you know is the action, impact, result format, AIR. Action, of course, is what you did. Impact is what that action accomplished, and result is why it matters to the mission, whether that's the wing mission, the MAGCOM mission, the headquarters Air Force mission, our career fields mission, or even for your commander, as you are a special staff member for your commander. However it matters to the mission is what you want to capture in the result. Now let's take a look at an example of how you can put all of these together. It begins, of course, with the job description component. This is some of my OPR fodder that I've used in the past. Assigned as the senior IMA instructor. So the action, backfilled 20 days in an active duty personnel shortage. The impact of that action, trained 46 company grade officers in 3 courses. The result, Air Force Chaplain Corps College met 100% of its MAGCOM requirements. Now you can see how that bullet looks at the very bottom. I hope you can see it. It's actually a very small print, but that's how it would be all put together in one bullet for an OPR. Notice the story that's told from the job description through the action, impact, and result format. Also, notice the punctuation. That's how the board wants to see your story. The semicolon comes after action. The dash comes after impact. Sometimes you might need to use 2 dashes if you're working with the spacing. And then after the result, you can use an exclamation point if it's warranted, but I would use those sparingly, and certainly you have to be cautious with space. Don't overuse them because that'll look like you're just trying to fill up the space. Let's take a look at another example in the AIR format. This is a different job description component. IMA to the Deputy Commandant for the Air Force Chaplain Corps College Operations. The action, lead reserve contributor to strategic curriculum review. Wrote reserve component perspective into 45 lesson plans. The result, the wing chaplain course is now 100% total force focused. Again, you can see how that looks across the bottom as one solid bullet that would be fitting into the bullet blocks. Again, notice the punctuation, notice how the story is told from the job description all the way through to the mission impact, the mission result rather, in this particular case for the Air Force Chaplain Corps College. Now, here's a pro tip that came from the Chief's work we're going to see in just a moment. Chief Jarns, he called it his pro tip number 1. Some accomplishments are better communicated with an action impact form only, combining impact and result. Let's take a look at an example of one of those. In this case, it's still the exact same job description component, IMA to the Deputy Commandant for Air Force Chaplain Corps College Operations. The action, strategic advice to the active duty led to 365-day IMA staffing plan. The impact will increase manpower 37% and reinforce the total force perspective daily. Again, you can see how that bullet is put together at the bottom as one. Now, why would you use the AI only format here? Well, the impact was twofold and was also a result of the action. Also, the action had a clearly implicit impact as well. It's a little bit harder to parse out the impact and the result from this particular action. So it made sense to use the AI only format here. It will not diminish the strength of the bullet. And for me, it's nice to have these options sometimes, especially when the action like this is more indirect, which is most always the case whenever we are advising. Now notice also the quantification of the action into measurable impacts and results. You can see under action, 365-day IMA staffing plan. You can see under impact, 37% of manpower has been increased. And in the other examples, you saw some very specific measurable actions and impact. Any successful action can have a measurable impact and result, especially if you think about it ahead of time. And I know for us as religious ministry professionals, this can be a little bit difficult because working with people, often we wonder, my goodness, how can we measure our impact? How can that be quantified? We'll take a look at this next slide, and you can see that you can always measure things like quality. You can measure it, this was the best, it was the most successful, it was the top percentage. You can always measure quantity, the scope of the effort, and its effect. You can always measure the time, the hours saved, did you come in ahead of schedule, and of course you can measure the cost, the number of hours, man hours, dollars, resources, and so forth. It is especially effective if there is a known standard against which your impact or action can be measured. For example, you can ask yourself, what was the standard, and by how much did the action exceed or improve the standard? You can see here, standards like time, how far ahead of schedule, was it done on a short notice? Dollars, again, how much money was saved, equipment, pounds, units, boxes, assets, how many, what were they worth, and of course personnel. If a bullet answers at least one of these questions, then it is an effective bullet. Now, one more piece of basic guidance, and then we'll look at the rest of the Chief's Pro Tips. Know the red zone on the OPR, EPR. And there are actually 4 or 5 red zones that you want to pay attention to. The first you see up at the top is the job description, and I've already emphasized why that is important. That's the story that you want to tell in your OPR, EPR, how you did your job. And then you can see the next 4 red zones are the top line and the bottom line of each of the raters. Now, make sure that they align to tell this great story. Board members will scan the lines in between the top and the bottom line for confirmation or clarification of your top and bottom lines. The bottom line is literally considered to be your bottom line about this individual's performance. If the story is well told in the blocks, in these 5 blocks, then the board members won't need to read the lines in between, though they may come back to them at some point, particularly if they're trying to sort out some disparities in their racking and their stacking. But if they can get a great story, or if they see a bad story in these 5 blocks, it'll figure heavily into their scoring of the record. Good bottom lines include strats, recommendations for the next job or assignment, and a PME push. Also, including none of those things tells a story too. Now, take a look at this timeline of how the board meets. This is just for your situational awareness, because a lot of folks are under the impression that the board only meets for just a couple of weeks. That is in fact the case. It meets for the 1 to 2 weeks, but look at the process. It starts 150 days out prior to the board meeting. And there are a number of key steps that have to be taken before that time. And then of course, 90 days out after the board meets is when the board is considered complete after the final pin-on for field grade officers. All right, you can come back to that slide in a little bit when you have time. Study it on your own if you like. But for now, I want to talk about the Chief's Pro Tips. And if my assistants will help me by bringing up the Chief's Pro Tips. Again, this is Chief Warren. He's a retired Chief Master Sergeant, and in his lunch and learn brown bag lunches, he taught these tips to the folks who attended. There we go. The brown bag lessons. The first, that's really, I think, very insightful, is learning how to recognize performance levels. And he has 4 different, you actually see in a minute, 5 different performance levels. Membership being the most basic, then supervisory, management, and leadership. And go ahead to that next page and you'll see how he defines each of these levels of membership. Here we go, membership level. Again, the very basic level, the level that as for officers, we start off as company grade officers, especially lieutenants. We're just learning to do our job basically and do it at the most basic level possible. Same is true for our junior enlisted at the membership level. And then the next level, go ahead. The supervisory level. This is obviously a step when you're starting to supervise other people, other programs, other projects, and so you can see the skills will increase in their difficulty. And then from the supervisory level, go ahead and take a look at the next one. We'll go through these pretty quickly too, by the way. Is the management level. I think the difference there in his mind is that managers are actually supervising supervisors. So your responsibility is going to spread out and broaden, and the depth of your work is going to broaden as well, both in programs and people. And then the final level, for the leadership level, is the leadership level. And again, this is probably the strategic level that you're going to see in his description. Now, how does he put these together? Go ahead and take a look at this next slide for the real big aha moment. At least it was for me, and I hope it will be for you as well. Oh, there's the 5th level, by the way. I forgot, the fluff level. And of course, he's kind of tongue-in-cheek here when he's talking about it, but he's saying basically, and he'll show some examples here in a moment, fluff doesn't count. And when a 06 line officer sitting on a promotion board sees the fluff, she or he immediately knows it and discounts it. And it does not create or tell a very good story at all, neither for the person that you're writing on, nor for you as the writer. Go ahead and take a look and see how he puts these things together. We're looking at bullets. Go ahead to that next slide really quickly. Here we go. Well, he actually calls this performance scale, but this is where he takes the level of performance and he shows you how to scale your bullets across the action, impact, and result. And what he says is the absolute strongest bullet is when a person performs an action at a lower level, like the membership level, but the impact has a higher order effect, like at the supervisory level. And the result has an even higher order effect at the management level. Those are the strongest bullets that he's ever written or that he's ever read. When you can create, when the action warrants it, and you can create your bullet to stratify across those levels of leadership, it's a very strong and powerful bullet. Go ahead and take a look at the next slide for some other examples. So this is an example of just a straight across the board, single level bullet. It's at the membership level. This is obviously a maintenance airman who changed an aircraft tire within the job standard, and the aircraft was returned to service. Pretty easy. Take a look at the next one. Also a straight line, I think. At the supervisory level, if my memory serves. Yep, again, supervisory level led the landing gear change. Half the normal time was a 12-ship exercise. Not a bad bullet, but take a look at what a great bullet looks like. Here's an example with a supervisory level action leaned the training. It had a management level impact, cut 10 steps in 20 minutes on each of those steps. And it had a leadership level result, benchmark for 10,000 airmen. That is a strong and powerful bullet. And when you think about constructing your bullets and even reading the bullets that you will be submitting, if you can build your bullets this way, if the action and the impact and the result truly warrant this, if you can build your bullets in this manner, they will be powerful, powerful bullets and tell a great story. All right, go on to the next of the Chief's tips. Apologize to our viewers. We've got some delays here in our technology. That's essentially the summary, the takeaway of what we just talked about. So you can go on to the next slide. Thank you, Chaplain Richardson. I'm going to skip this one. Folks can certainly take a look at it if they want, but I'm going to move this slide and the next slide I think I'm going to skip. Yes, all right. His top 10 writing tips. We're actually going to look at 3. And then there are more. If you guys want to get a copy of all of Chief Jarin's presentation, you can email your course director, request it of your course director, and we'll put it perhaps even on Canvas as well. So the first tip, the TOS concept. Go ahead to that next slide if you don't mind, sir. It's the tactical, operational, and strategic concept. And the idea here is that as you build your bullets, or as you read and evaluate bullets, there needs to be a logical, somewhat intuitive connection between the action, the impact, and the result. He'll show you an example here in just a moment of what he calls kind of a bridge too far. And sometimes you've probably seen these or maybe even written them yourselves, where the action and the result don't seem to connect at all. In fact, the action at a tactical level is purported to have a result, or at the strategic level, and there's just no way that that can actually be possible. So let's look at some examples of this tip. Go ahead, Chaplain Richardson. And we'll go through these pretty quickly, so you can go ahead and hit the next one with our delay. All of that bullet, by the way, had a purely tactical action, impact, and result. This one, you can see that the action and then the impact and the result actually kind of step up to that tactical operational level. And then that excellent bullet that he showed you a minute ago, the example of the excellent bullet, actually touches all 3, the tactical, operational, and the strategic level. The strong results that connect to this individual action and have this great impact. Now, I think the next example, go ahead, is a bad example of the bridge too far concept, where the action does not indeed match up to the result. Yeah, so this one, replaced rivets on the cargo door, 2 billion C5A fleet routed 100 tons of cargo. How in the world can replacing the rivets on the cargo door of one C5 aircraft have a $2 billion impact to the Air Force? It was a bridge too far, a tactical action with a tactical impact that was purported to have a strategic result. That's a bad example and one that we want to avoid. All right, go ahead to the next slide, please. Thank you. Oh, I think this is a very good tip. It's called the iceberg model. Go ahead. He basically talks about how sometimes we put too much emphasis on either the action or too much emphasis on the result and in the bullet writing, and therefore he calls it the iceberg example. Basically, all the good stuff in the action doesn't really get seen. He's advocating for a balance in our writing. So by the way, this example, business case analysis at the bottom is the BCA. There is an example, prep the BCA, secured corporate approval of a $10 million manpower reorganization. Go ahead, keep clicking through that. I think it builds. So you can see where he has identified some fluff and some management level, action, impact, and result. That's an example in a linear fashion of what he calls the iceberg model. The prep to the BCA, you see that's above the water line, the results in the impact below the water line. He notes there that PREP is ambiguous and offers little value to demonstrate the true competency, what the actual action was. PREP could mean you built the slides, you coordinated the staff summary sheet, you review the materials for someone important. It means a lot, but it's ambiguous. And so when you look at that bullet, it's like looking at an iceberg. The vast majority of it is below the water, and it doesn't stand out. Go ahead to the next example. This is what the prep actually included, and it could have been a better way of demonstrating that. And this slide you see, he takes those examples from the previous slide, and he includes them in the action, so it better balances with the really, really strong result. Led the year-long project, ran monthly meetings, conducted risk analysis to develop 3 courses of action. That's leadership level competency, and it's a better explanation and a better bullet when it's fleshed out that way, so that you've got balance on the top and the bottom, whereas in his mind, the action, the impact, and the result. Okay, go ahead to the next slide. All right, this one is important, and I want to foot stomp this particularly for the chaplain corps. You can go ahead and try to advance it. There you go. The faulty lead-in. We do this all the time in the chaplain corps. Part of it is the fact that we are encouragers. Part of it is the fact that we're not used to quantifying our efforts. But I'll be honest, sometimes I think it's just because we don't put forth the right kind of effort in our bullet writing. We'll start with some fluffy, superfluous accolade and turn it into an action. Hard charger. And of course, in the chief's example here, completed 12 CBTs, 100% compliant with mobility training. Hard charger goes right into the fluff line. Everything else that follows is membership level. Can you go back to one? Yeah. Everything else is membership level. So you're a hard charging membership level individual. Of course, you can see his comments at the bottom, not even going there regarding CBTs. If you start the bullet off at the membership level, you have yourself a hole to dig out of. I can't tell you how many OPRs, EPRs I've read that were for chaplains or written by chaplains that start off with some sort of faulty lead-in, some sort of fluff point there that doesn't really help tell the story. Now, that's all of the chief's lessons that we have time for today. As I said, you can certainly look up on Canvas to get more of these, and there are several that are very, very good, but those are the ones that I wanted to highlight for you today. In this lesson, we've looked at both some basics and some pro tips for excellent bullet writing, and I hope there are some nuggets for both the beginners and the seasoned writers. Remember, make sure that your paperwork and that of your teammates is promotable by telling the story of excellent performance in the way your audience needs to hear it. And if the performance isn't there, use the total evaluation process with the initial, midterm, and final feedback to coach up that performance to excellence. May God bless you and give you the wisdom to lead.